David Reed pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor, wheels squeaking against polished floor tiles. Third shift on Galactic Station Meridian meant most beings were asleep, which suited him fine. Less mess, less noise, more time to think. The mop bucket sloshed as he turned corner after corner. 17 years he had worked these hallways, watching aliens come and go. Diplomats, traders, families. They barely noticed the human with the mop. That was fine too. Tonight felt different though. Voices echoed from the diplomatic wing, angry and sharp. David slowed his cart. The Draconian sector rarely had visitors this late. Ambassador Wrath stood in the hallway, his crimson scales gleaming under bright lights. 3 other dragons surrounded him, all massive and proud. Between them sat a small crate, and from inside came soft peeping sounds. David pretended to clean nearby, ears open. Unacceptable. Wrath's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Look at those wings. Malformed. Useless. Another dragon peered into the crate. Perhaps with time and care, the hatchling might improve. We do not waste resources on defects. Wrath turned away from the crate. The clan has standards. This creature meets none of them. David's hands tightened on his mop handle. He risked a glance at the crate. Inside, barely visible through the mesh, huddled a tiny dragon. Her scales were dull gray instead of the brilliant colors her species normally displayed. Her wings sat crooked against her back, clearly misshapen. She looked up at the larger dragons with wide, hopeful eyes. They looked away. Station Administrator Chun arrived next, tablet in hand. Ambassador, we need to resolve this situation. The hatchling cannot remain in the corridor. Then dispose of it appropriately. Wrath waved a clawed hand. We reject all claim to this defective offspring. Chen's face tightened. We will contact other species delegations. Perhaps someone will accept guardianship. For the next hour, David watched various aliens arrive and depart. Each examined the small dragon. Each found reasons to refuse. The avian delegates said her wings would never fly. So what was the point? The aquatic representatives claimed their environment was unsuitable. The insectoid hive queens stated they only cared for their own genetic lines. One by one, they all walked away. The tiny dragon's peeping grew softer, more desperate. Chun rubbed her tired eyes. I will contact the Wildlife Preserve on Outpost 7. They may have facilities for special needs cases. That facility euthanizes creatures deemed non-viable, said her assistant quietly. I know. Chen's voice was flat. But we have no other options. The hatchling cannot survive alone, and no one wants her. They left the crate in the corridor, planning to deal with it during day's shift. The lights dimmed to night cycle. The tiny dragon fell silent. David should have continued his rounds. Should have minded his own business. 17 years of invisible work had taught him to keep his head down. But he could not stop seeing those hopeful eyes, watching as every potential guardian turned away. He finished cleaning the diplomatic wing slowly, checking every few minutes. The crate remained untouched. Around midnight, he heard it. Soft crying sounds, barely audible. Not peeping anymore, but something worse. Despair. David parked his cart and approached the crate. Up close, the hatchling was even smaller than he had thought. Maybe the size of a house cat. Her scales were indeed gray and dull. Her wings bent at wrong angles. But her eyes, when she looked up at him, were bright and intelligent and so terribly sad. Hey there, little one, he whispered. The dragon's crying stopped. She tilted her head, studying this strange two-legged creature. David glanced down the empty corridor. Security cameras watched every corner, but he knew their blind spots. 17 years taught you things that he opened the crate carefully. The dragon pressed against the back wall, trembling. David extended his hand slowly, palm up. His mother had taught him this method with frightened animals back on Earth, decades ago. I'm not going to hurt you, he said softly. I promise. The dragon sniffed his hand. Her nose was warm. After a long moment, she took one hesitant step forward, then another. She was so light when she climbed onto his palm, barely 2 pounds of scale and bone. David knew this was stupid, knew he could lose his job, knew he had no business taking a sentient being's offspring. But looking at this tiny, unwanted creature, he also knew he could not let her die alone in some sterile facility. He tucked her inside his work jacket, feeling her settle against his chest. Her trembling slowed. The corridor cameras would show him cleaning, then pushing his cart away. The crate would be empty by morning, and station security would probably assume someone had already taken her. David's supply closet on level 7 was small and cluttered, full of cleaning products and spare equipment. But it was warm, and it was private, and it was more than this little dragon had right now. That he made a nest from clean rags, piling them in the corner. The dragon watched him with those intelligent eyes. When he set her down gently, she immediately burrowed into the fabric, disappearing except for her small snout. Just for tonight, David told himself. Tomorrow I will figure something out. But even as he said it, watching the tiny dragon finally relax into sleep, he knew he was lying. Tomorrow he would come back, and the day after. For as long as she needed him. The galaxy had rejected her. Every species that claimed to value life had turned away. But David Reed, invisible janitor, third shift nobody, could not. He left a small bowl of water nearby and dimmed the lights. The dragon's soft breathing filled the quiet closet, peaceful at last. David locked the door behind him and returned to his rounds, his jacket feeling empty and cold. 3 days passed before David admitted to himself that this was permanent. The little dragon was still there every night when he unlocked the closet door, still curled in her rag nest, still looking up at him with those bright, trusting eyes. He had started bringing food from the cafeteria, bits of meat and protein that the dragon gobbled eagerly. She had stopped trembling around him. That felt like victory. David named her Pip, after the small spots on her wings that looked like seeds. She seemed to like the sound, chirping softly whenever he said it. "Pip, I brought you chicken tonight," he said, settling onto the floor beside her nest. "Real Earth chicken. Station cafeteria claims it is authentic." Pip scrambled out of the rags and onto his lap, sniffing at the container. Her tail wrapped around his wrist as she ate, a gesture that made David's chest tight. Trust. She trusted him. During his breaks, David used the station library computers. Dragon care guides were limited, most written for fully functional hatchlings with proper clan support. But he found basics, temperature requirements, nutritional needs, social development stages. That last part worried him most. Young dragons needed bonding, needed family structure. Isolation could permanently damage their psychological development. "Guess you were stuck with a human then," he told Pip, scratching under her chin. She purred, a sound like rocks tumbling together. "I'm not much, but I am here." He started staying later after his shift, talking to her constantly. About Earth, about his childhood in Montana, about why he had come to space. Pip listened to everything, head tilted, eyes focused on his face. On the 5th night, she tried to climb his shoulder. Her malformed wings flapped uselessly, but her claws found purchase on his work jacket. She settled against his neck, warm and content, and David felt something break open in his chest. He was in serious trouble now. The problem was Orphan. The maintenance worker had noticed David's strange behavior, how protective he had become of his supply closet, how he lingered near level 7 even when his cleaning route took him elsewhere. David saw Orphan watching him, saw the suspicion growing that IT came to a head on Tuesday night. David was feeding Pip, door cracked open for air when footsteps approached. He barely had time to scoop Pip up and stuff her into a ventilation shaft before Orphan appeared. Orphan leaned against the doorframe. "You've been acting weird. Just doing my job." David kept his voice steady. "Right? Your job that now includes guarding a supply closet like it contains gold." Orphan's eyes swept the small room. "What are you hiding?" "Nothing. I can report you. Get security to search this place properly." David's hands clenched. "Why would you do that?" "Because I do not like sneaky behavior on my station." Orphan stepped inside. "So tell me the truth, or I call it in." From the ventilation shaft came a small, sad chirp. Orphan froze. His eyes went wide. "Is that please?" David moved between Orphan and the shaft. "Please do not report this. You have a dragon. A whole dragon. in a supply closet. Orrin stared at him. Do you have any idea how much trouble you will be in? She was going to die. The words burst out of David. They were going to kill her because her wings are not perfect, because she is small. Every species on the station looked at her and saw garbage. So yes, I took her. I cannot let them kill her for being born wrong. Orrin said nothing for a long moment. Then he sighed. Get her out of the shaft. David hesitated, then reached up. Pip, come here, girl. The little dragon crawled out carefully, dropping into David's hands. She immediately pressed against his chest, eyeing Orrin warily. Orrin crouched down, studying Pip closely. She is tiny. Premature hatching, I think. The guides say dragons born early often had development issues, and the Draconians just abandoned her. They called her defective. David's voice was bitter, said their clan had standards. Orrin reached out slowly. Pip sniffed his fingers, then allowed him to touch her head. She seems healthy otherwise. I've been feeding her well, keeping her warm. She is growing. Reed, you cannot keep a sentient being's child in a closet forever. I know. David sagged against the wall. But what else can I do? Nobody wanted her. The preserve would have put her down. At least here, she is alive and safe. Orrin stood, thinking hard. Finally, he said, I will not report you. Relief flooded through David. Thank you, but you need help. This setup is not sustainable. Orrin gestured at the cramped space. She needs room to grow, better food, enrichment. I'm doing my best. I know you are. That is why I'm going to help. Orrin pulled out his tablet. I know people, other workers who might be sympathetic. We can get you supplies, better food sources, maybe even some toys. David blinked. Why would you help? Orrin looked at Pip, who was now climbing David's arm to reach his shoulder. Because 17 years ago, my daughter was born on this station with a genetic condition. The medical staff on her home world said she was not worth treating. But humans here helped us, gave us resources and support when our own people turned away. He met David's eyes. She is alive because someone decided she had value. How can I do less for this little one? Pip reached David's shoulder and settled there, her favorite spot. She chirped happily, tail wrapping around his neck. What is your plan? Orrin asked. Honestly, I have no idea. I am making this up as I go. Then we better start planning. Orrin sat down on an overturned bucket. First, she needs proper nutrition. I can redirect some expired protein shipments your way. Second, she needs mental stimulation. Dragons are intelligent. She will need challenges. David listened as Orrin outlined ideas. For the first time since taking Pip, he felt hope that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. Pip nuzzled against his cheek, purring that rocky purr. She did not care about plans or futures or consequences. She just knew she was safe, warm, and wanted. Sometimes, David thought, that was enough to start with. Thank you, he told Orrin quietly. Thank me by keeping her healthy. Orrin smiled. And Reed, you're doing a good thing here. Do not let anyone tell you different. After Orrin left, David held Pip close, feeling her small heart beating against his palm. The galaxy might not have wanted her, but he did. And with help, maybe he could give her the life she deserved. We're going to be okay, he whispered to her. I promise. Pip chirped agreement, already falling asleep in his arms. 2 months transformed everything. Pip had doubled in size, now as large as a medium dog. Her scales had started developing color, hints of silver threading through the gray. She was still small for her age, but she was growing, thriving. Even the supply closet had become a miniature playground. David built obstacle courses from mop handles and buckets. Pip loved solving the puzzles he created, figuring out how to move objects or reach hidden treats. You are too smart for your own good, David told her as she knocked over a carefully balanced tower of cleaning bottles to get the food underneath. Pip chirped proudly, tail wagging. Orrin had kept his promise. Other station workers quietly joined the conspiracy. Yuki from security started bringing scraps from the high-end restaurants. A Centauri cook named Blue provided protein specifically formulated for growing dragons. Even old Mrs. Park from administration smuggled in toys her grandchildren had outgrown. Nobody reported David. The working class of Meridian Station had silently agreed to protect this secret, But secrets on a space station never lasted forever. The trouble started when Pip tried to fly. Her wings had grown, but the malformation remained. They bent at wrong angles, unable to generate proper lift. Pip would flap desperately, manage a few inches of height, then crash back down. Each failure left her more distressed. She would huddle in her nest afterward, making sad little sounds that broke David's heart. "I know you want to fly," he said, holding her close. "I know it is not fair." Pip buried her face against his chest. Dragons were meant to soar. Being grounded was torture for her instincts. David spent 3 nights researching, thinking, planning. Finally, he had an idea. The station's ventilation system created strong air currents in certain areas. If he could harness that, maybe Pip could glide, even if she could not truly fly. He fashioned a harness from cargo straps, padded with soft material. Pip accepted it after some initial squirming, trusting David completely. He carried her to a service shaft with strong, upward airflow. "Okay, girl, spread your wings. Let the air catch them." Pip extended her crooked wings. The current lifted her, and for the first time, she rose smoothly into the air. Not flying exactly, but gliding, floating, suspended by the artificial wind. Her joy was explosive. She chirped and spun and climbed higher in the shaft. David anchored her harness, controlling her ascent, laughing as she discovered this new freedom. For 20 minutes, Pip glided. When David finally lowered her down, she was exhausted but radiantly happy. She licked his face enthusiastically, purring so loud the walls vibrated. "We will do this every night," David promised. "You may not fly like other dragons, but you will soar." Word of Pip's gliding sessions spread among the workers. More people started appearing during David's shifts, wanting to meet the dragon that lived in a supply closet, wanting to see the human who had built her a home from nothing. That was how the rumors reached the Draconian delegation. Ambassador Wrath heard whispers that a human janitor was keeping one of their cast-off hatchlings as a pet. The insult burned. Dragons were proud, powerful beings. The idea of one living with a lowly human, in a cleaning closet no less, was humiliating to their entire species. Wrath demanded a formal inspection of the station's lower levels. Commander Wells had no choice but to agree. David got the warning from Yuki just hours before the inspection team arrived. "They are coming for Pip," she said urgently. Wrath specifically requested to examine all storage areas on level 7. David's blood ran cold. "What do I do?" "I do not know. But read. If they find her, they will take her. And after all this publicity, after they rejected her the first time, do you think they will let her live?" David looked at Pip, who was napping peacefully in her nest, wings twitching as she dreamed. Maybe dreaming of gliding through air currents, of being free. "They are not taking her," he said quietly. "I do not care what it costs me." When Commander Wells arrived with Ambassador Wrath and 2 other Draconians, David was waiting outside the supply closet. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. "Commander, read." Wells looked uncomfortable. "The ambassador has requested to inspect this storage area. I know why you are here." David did not move from the door. "And I am not letting you in." Wrath's eyes narrowed. "You dare refuse a direct order from Station Command. I dare protect someone who needs protecting. You speak of our hatchling." Wrath's voice dripped contempt. "The defective one we rightfully discarded. Her name is Pip." David's fear was transforming into anger. "And she is not defective. She is perfect." "Step aside, Reed," Wells said quietly. "Please do not make this harder." "Commander, with respect, I will not step aside." Behind him, the closet door opened. Pip emerged, drawn by David's voice. She saw the larger dragons and immediately pressed against David's legs, trembling, just like that first night. Wrath stared at her. "Look at it. Still malformed. Still weak. She is stronger than you know." David reached down, touching Pip's head. She leaned into his hand. "She has learned things. Grown. Adapted. It lives in a closet. How dignified for our species." "She lives in a home," David shot back. "With someone who actually cares about her. That is more than your people gave her." The corridor had filled with station workers. Oren stood nearby. "Yuki. Blue. Mrs. Park, dozens of others, all watching silently. Wrath's face darkened with rage. You cannot keep what belongs to us. You threw her away. You do not get to reclaim her now. Commander Wells, I demand you remove this creature from improper custody immediately. Wells looked torn. Read, legally, the ambassador might have a claim. Then change the law. David's voice rose. Because I'm not giving her up. Fire me. Arrest me. Do whatever you want. But you're not taking Pip. Yuki stepped forward. Commander, I've been documenting this situation for weeks. David has provided better care for this hatchling than any official facility could offer. I have the records to prove it. More workers moved closer, forming a loose barrier around David and Pip. Raph looked at them with disgust. You all risk yourselves for one defective hatchling. No, Oren said calmly. We stand with someone who saw value where others saw trash. That is worth risking something for. The tension hung thick in the corridor. Pip whimpered softly. David stroked her scales, whispering reassurances. Then a new voice cut through the standoff. Excuse me, may I examine the hatchling? A woman pushed through the crowd. Dr. Hannah Sato, the station's xenobiologist. David had seen her before, but never spoken to her. Dr. Sato, this is not a medical matter, Wells began. Actually, Commander, it might be. Hannah knelt beside Pip, who looked to David for permission. He nodded slightly. That Hannah's examination was gentle and thorough. She checked Pip's wings, scales, eyes, reflexes. Pip tolerated it, sensing no threat. Finally, Hannah stood. This hatchling was premature, hatched at least 2 weeks early, probably due to environmental stress on the egg. Meaning, Raph asked impatiently. Meaning her condition is developmental, not genetic. With proper nutrition, physical therapy, and time, she will likely develop normal wing function. The corridor went silent. You are saying she is not defective? Wells asked. I am saying she was treatable from start. Hannah looked directly at Raph. She never needed to be abandoned. The news spread faster than fire and oxygen. Within hours, every major news feed across Meridian Station carried the story. Human janitor rescues abandoned dragon hatchling. Draconian delegation rejects treatable infant. The images were damning. Pip, small and trusting, pressed against David's legs. Ambassador Wrath, magnificent and cold, turning away from her. Public opinion erupted. David tried to continue his normal routine, but reporters ambushed him at every corner. Cameras followed him. Interview requests flooded his personal communicator. He ignored them all, focusing only on Pip. She could feel the tension. Dragons were empathic, especially young ones. She stayed close to David constantly, barely eating, whimpering in her sleep. It is okay, he whispered, holding her in the supply closet. I will not let anything happen to you. But he knew the situation had grown beyond his control. The Draconian government contacted their delegation. Ambassador Wrath faced formal censure from his own people. Images of a small, helpless dragon being rejected by her own kind contradicted everything Draconians claimed about their noble culture. It was a public relations disaster. On the third day, Wrath appeared at David's closet with a formal offer. The Draconian Assembly wishes to resolve this situation appropriately, he said, reading from a prepared statement. We acknowledge that the hatchling's rejection was premature and regrettable. We offer to reclaim her into proper Draconian care, with full medical treatment and clan integration. David stared at him. No, we will compensate you financially for your efforts. 50,000 credits. Absolutely not. Wrath's professional mask slipped, showing frustration. 100,000. That is more than you earn in 5 years. She is not for sale. David's voice was ice. You threw her away. You do not get her back just because you are embarrassed. Be reasonable, human. We can provide resources you cannot. Medical care, proper nutrition, education in dragon culture and history. You live in a closet. We offer her a future. Pip, who had been hiding behind David's legs, growled. A small sound, but fierce. She pressed harder against David, making her choice clear. She disagrees with you, David said. Wrath looked genuinely baffled. She is an infant. She does not understand what is best for her. She understands who wanted her when nobody else did. The Galactic Council finally intervened, calling an emergency hearing to address what was rapidly becoming a diplomatic incident. David received a formal summons to appear and testify. Yuki found him staring at the summons in his closet, Pip curled in his lap. "You need representation," she said. "Legal counsel. I cannot afford a lawyer." "Already handled." She smiled slightly. "Turns out half the station's legal workers have been following your story. 3 of them volunteered to represent you pro bono. They are good, Reed. Really good." The hearing took place in the station's Grand Council chamber, a space David had only ever cleaned, never entered as a participant. Hundreds of beings packed the gallery. Every major species had sent representatives. David wore his cleanest work uniform. Pip rode on his shoulder, her usual spot, occasionally nuzzling his cheek for comfort. The council chairman, an ancient crystalline being named Brightness, called the session to order. "We gather to address the custody dispute regarding the dragon hatchling known as Pip." Ambassador Wrath presented his case first. He spoke of draconian heritage, cultural rights, species sovereignty. He argued that despite their initial rejection, Pip belonged with her own kind. That David, however well-meaning, could never provide what a dragon needed. Then it was David's turn. His lead attorney, a sharp avian woman named Trill, presented documentation. Medical records showing Pip's steady improvement. Psychological evaluations demonstrating healthy emotional development. Video footage of Pip solving puzzles, playing, responding to David's voice with clear affection. Then Trill called David to testify that he stood at the podium, acutely aware of all the eyes on him. Important beings. Powerful beings. And here he was, just a janitor. "Mr. Reed," Trill began gently, "please describe how you came to care for Pip." David told the story simply. The abandoned crate. The crying hatchling. The decision he made that night. "Why did you take her?" Trill asked. "Because nobody else would." David's voice was quiet. "Because she was alive and aware and scared, and every person who looked at her saw a problem to dispose of. I cannot walk away from that." "Were you qualified to care for a dragon hatchling?" "No. I had no idea what I was doing. I researched everything, asked for help, made mistakes. But I tried. Every single day, I tried to give her what she needed. And what did she need, in your opinion?" David looked at Pip, still perched on his shoulder. "Safety, food, warmth. Someone who saw her as valuable, as worth protecting." Trill nodded. "Thank you. No further questions." Ambassador Wrath stood to cross-examine. "Mr. Reed, do you deny that draconian culture and education would benefit this hatchling?" "No, but I deny that culture matters more than love." "Love?" Wrath scoffed. "You speak of emotions toward another species' offspring." "Yes." David met his eyes steadily. "I love her. She is mine, and I am hers. That bond matters more than genetics. Humans are death worlders, violent by nature. How can you claim to offer a nurturing environment?" "Humans protect what we care about," David said. "Yes, Earth was harsh. That taught us to value life, to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Pip was helpless when I found her. My instinct was not violence. It was protection." Murmurs ran through the gallery. Several representatives nodded. Wrath changed tactics. "Can you provide educational resources equal to what Draconian academies offer?" "No." "Medical facilities?" "No." "Cultural connection to her heritage?" "No." David took a breath. "I cannot give her any of those things. But I can give her something you could not. I can give her a home where she is wanted, where she matters, where her value is not measured by how perfect her wings are." Sentimental nonsense. "Maybe." David's voice strengthened. "But she is healthy, happy, growing, thriving. I have given her everything she actually needed. Everything you refused to give her. We made an error in judgment. We seek to correct it. You seek to save face." David felt anger rising. "You do not want Pip. You want to stop looking bad. But she is not a public relations tool. She is a person, and she deserves better than being reclaimed only because you are embarrassed." Trill called her final witness. Dr. Hanasato presented her findings, explaining Pip's premature development, her treatable condition, her remarkable progress under David's care. "In my professional opinion," Hannah concluded. This hatchling has received excellent care. Her physical and psychological development is on track for a healthy dragon of her age. Removing her from her current environment would be traumatic and potentially harmful. The council deliberated for 2 hours. David waited in an antechamber, holding Pip close. She could sense his fear, making worried sounds. "Whatever happens, I love you," he whispered. "Remember that." Finally, they were summoned back. The chamber had grown even more crowded. Beings packed every available space, all wanting to witness the verdict. Chairman Brightness's crystalline form glowed as he spoke. "This council has heard testimony from both parties. We have reviewed extensive documentation. We have considered legal precedent and cultural sovereignty laws." David's heart hammered. "However, we have also considered the welfare of the individual at the center of this dispute." Brightness gestured toward Pip, a living being with her own needs, her own bonds, her own preferences. Wrath leaned forward. "It is this council's determination that custody shall remain with David Reed, human, pending final conditions." The gallery erupted. David nearly collapsed with relief. Pip chirped happily, sensing his joy. Brightness continued over the noise. "Mr. Reed will retain full guardianship rights with the following provisions: medical monitoring by Dr. Sato to ensure continued health, educational resources to be provided by the Galactic Species Alliance, and most critically, when Pip reaches maturity and can make informed choices, she must be given the option to join Draconian society if she wishes." David nodded quickly. "Yes, absolutely. Whatever she wants, when she is old enough to choose." Ambassador Wrath, your government's offer to provide educational materials and cultural resources is accepted to be delivered to Mr. Reed for Pip's benefit. However, custody transfer is denied. Rat's face darkened, but he bowed stiffly. The Draconian delegation accepts this ruling. Brightness's glow softened. "Mr. Reed, this council recognizes your actions as exemplifying the best qualities of cross-species cooperation and empathy. You saw value where others saw none. You provided care when all others refused. These are the principles upon which this station and this council were founded." David could barely speak. "Thank you. No, Mr. Reed. Thank you for reminding us all what truly matters." The ruling changed everything, but not in ways David expected. Within a week, his face was on news feeds across 6 sectors. The janitor who defied a galactic government for an abandoned dragon. The Deathworlder who chose compassion over obedience. The story resonated with millions of beings who had felt powerless, dismissed, forgotten. David hated the attention. He just wanted to care for Pip in peace, but the galaxy had other plans. The first package arrived on Tuesday. Educational materials from the Draconian Cultural Ministry. Dragon history, language lessons, traditional music. A note included: "Read simply, for the hatchling's benefit. Use them well." More packages followed, from species across the council. Books, toys, learning tools. A Centauri artist sent a beautiful mobile that created holographic dragons in flight. An avian craftsman shipped a climbing structure that could adjust as Pip grew. "People care about her," Yuki said, helping David sort through the donations. "They care about what you did." David shook his head. "I just did not want her to die alone." "Exactly. Most beings would have walked away. You did not. That matters to people." The station administration offered David new quarters. Not a supply closet anymore, but a proper apartment on level 3. 2 rooms with high ceilings, perfect for a growing dragon. David accepted, though part of him missed the intimate closet where everything began. Pip loved the new space. She could spread her wings fully, practice her gliding form. David installed air circulators to create indoor currents. She would float from perch to perch, chirping happily, her wings growing stronger each day. But the biggest change came from the council itself. Chairman Brightness requested a private meeting. David arrived nervous, Pip riding his shoulder as always. "Mr. Reed, your situation has raised important questions," Brightness began. "About guardianship, species rights, and cross-species adoption. We need new laws to address these issues. I am not a lawmaker, David said carefully. No, but you're the reason we need these laws. Brightness pulsed with soft light. What would you have wanted when you first took Pip? What legal protections would have helped? David thought hard. Recognition that caring for someone matters more than biology. That bonds can form cross species. That love is not limited by what you look like. Brightness was silent for a moment. You speak of family. Yes, Pip is my family. I am hers. That should mean something legally. Over the next month, the Galactic Council drafted new legislation. The Cross-Species Guardianship Act. It established frameworks for adopting or caring for beings from other species. Rights for guardians. Protections for the young. Requirements for education and cultural connection. David testified 3 times during the drafting process, always bringing Pip. She had become a symbol. Hope for the rejected. Proof that family could be chosen, not just born. Other cases began appearing. An aquatic couple wanted to adopt an orphaned avian child. A human woman had been caring for an abandoned insectoid juvenile. Stories that had hidden in shadows, afraid of legal consequences, now came forward seeking protection. The act passed with overwhelming support. When Chairman Brightness signed it into law, David and Pip attended the ceremony. This legislation exists because one being refused to abandon another, Brightness announced to the assembled representatives. Because David Reed, human janitor, saw value in a hatchling his own species did not create, his own culture did not include, his own biology did not match. He simply saw someone who needed help, and he helped. That is the spirit we encode into law today. The gallery applauded. Pip chirped proudly from David's shoulder. He felt tears in his eyes, but not everyone celebrated. Conservative factions among various species opposed the new laws. They argued for cultural purity, species sovereignty, traditional family structures. The draconian government, despite their public acceptance of David's custody, quietly funded opposition groups. Protests erupted outside Meridian Station. Signs declared species should raise their own and stop genetic confusion. David watched the news feeds with growing unease. They hate what we represent, he told Orrin one night. They fear it, Orrin corrected. Change is always frightening. You prove that the old boundaries do not matter as much as they thought. That scares beings who built their identity on those boundaries. The threats started arriving next. Anonymous messages calling David a species traitor, claiming he was corrupting Pip, confusing her identity, destroying dragon culture. Some threatened violence. Station security increased patrols around David's quarters. Yuki personally escorted him during his shifts. The workers who had supported him from the beginning formed an informal protective network. Pip sensed the danger. She became more protective of David, growling at strangers, staying closer than ever. I am sorry, David told her one night. I did not mean for you to live in fear. Pip nuzzled his face, purring. Her message was clear. She would rather face fear with him than safety without him. Then the draconian delegation made an unexpected announcement. Ambassador Wrath, who had fought so hard to reclaim Pip, was being recalled. A new ambassador would take his place. Someone younger, more progressive. Someone who publicly supported the Cross-Species Guardianship Act. Ambassador Senna arrived quietly, requesting a private meeting with David and Pip. She was smaller than Wrath, her scales a deep emerald green. She studied Pip carefully, then addressed David with respect. I owe you an apology on behalf of my government, she said formally. Our treatment of this hatchling was shameful. You showed us what we should have been. David did not know what to say. Senna continued. I want to offer resources, not to take Pip from you, but to support you both. Dragon language tutors, if you want them. Cultural education. Medical specialists familiar with dragon development. All voluntary. All to help Pip understand her heritage while remaining with you. Why? David asked suspiciously. Because you were right. Love matters more than genetics. But heritage also matters. Pip deserves to know where she comes from, even if she chooses to stay where she is. David looked at Pip. She tilted her head, listening carefully to Senna's voice. There was curiosity there, not fear. We would appreciate that, David said slowly. As long as it is clear Pip stays with me. Absolutely clear. Senna bowed her head. You are her parent, Mr. Reed. We simply wish to be her heritage. The arrangement began carefully. A dragon language tutor named Kessa visited twice weekly, teaching both Pip and David. Pip loved learning dragon speech, though she still preferred chirping at David in their own mixed language that a historian provided books about dragon culture, great flights, ancient traditions. Pip listened to the stories with wide eyes, sometimes asking David to read them again and again. She was learning who dragons were, but she was also learning who she was. And that person was something new. Dragon biology. Human-raised, belonging fully to neither culture and, somehow, to both. Does it confuse you? David asked her one night, practicing his careful dragon speech. Being between worlds? Pip considered, then chirped a response. David's dragon was not good enough to fully understand, but he caught the meaning. She was not between worlds. She was building a bridge. Letters arrived from across the galaxy. Young beings who felt different, rejected, lost. They wrote to Pip, telling her she gave them hope. That if a dragon could be raised by a human, maybe they could be whatever they needed to be too. David read them to Pip, who listened solemnly. She was only months old, but already she carried meaning for millions of beings. That is a heavy burden, David said softly. Pip chirped agreement, but she was not afraid of it. She had David, and David had her. Together, they could carry anything. The galaxy was changing, slowly but inevitably. Old boundaries were blurring. New families were forming. And at the center of it all, a human janitor and a dragon hatchling proved that love could cross any divide. Not everyone accepted it. The protests continued. The threats persisted. But support grew stronger too. More voices joined the movement. More beings defended the right to choose family. David returned to his night shifts eventually, though now with an escort and much better pay. The station administration had created a new position for him, cultural integration specialist. He helped other cross-species families navigate the challenges he had faced, but he still cleaned too, still pushed his cart through empty corridors. It kept him grounded, reminded him where he came from. Pip often rode along, perched on the cart, watching the station pass by. Her wings were stronger now. She could glide for almost a minute in the right air currents. She would never fly like full-blooded dragons, but she would soar in her own way, just like David had given her a home in his own way. Not perfect, not traditional, but filled with love, and really, what else mattered? 20 years passed like water through fingers. David stood in the observation deck, watching ships come and go, feeling every one of his 68 years. Gray hair, creaking joints, hands weathered from decades of work. Time had marked him thoroughly, but some things remained constant that a massive form landed beside him with practiced grace. Pip, now fully grown, her scales brilliant silver streaked with pearl. Her wings, once malformed and weak, had strengthened over the years. She would never match pure-blooded dragons in flight, but she could glide beautifully, could soar on thermal currents for hours. She was magnificent. You should be resting, Pip said in perfect draconian, though she still preferred chirping at David. Dr. Sato said your heart needs less stress. My heart is fine. David scratched under her chin, that spot she still loved after all these years. I wanted to watch the new arrivals. The Orphan transport. Yes. Below them, a small ship docked. David had helped establish the program years ago. Orphan young from across the galaxy, beings rejected or abandoned by their own species, came to Meridian Station for care and placement. The facility they built was nothing like David's supply closet. Proper rooms, trained staff, medical facilities, educational resources. Everything he wished he had when he found Pip, but the heart of it remained the same. Love first, species second. I should go help with processing, Pip said, but she did not move. Just stayed close to David, their familiar comfort. She had become a bridge, exactly as she predicted as a hatchling. Ambassador to 5 species. Mediator in cultural disputes. Advocate for cross-species families. Her unique perspective, raised human but biologically dragon, gave her insight nobody else possessed. The draconian government now held her up as an example of progressive values. The same government that tried to reclaim her out of embarrassment 20 years ago. David found that ironic. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Staying with me instead of joining your own kind. Pip looked at him with ancient eyes. You are my kind. You always were. You know what I mean? Yes. She settled beside him, her bulk warm against his frail frame. And no, I do not regret it. I learned dragon culture, dragon history, dragon language. I know who my people are, but you taught me who I am. That matters more. Movement below caught their attention. The orphan transport was unloading. David counted 6 young beings. A small avian with damaged wings. An aquatic child whose colors marked her as genetically abnormal. A mammalian creature from a species David did not recognize, tiny and trembling. Each one rejected by their own. Each one seeking what Pip had found in a supply closet 20 years ago. They look so scared, David murmured. They are, but they will be safe here. Pip stood. Because you showed us how to care for the unwanted. The galaxy learned from you. The galaxy learned from us, David corrected. I just gave you a home. You gave everyone else hope. Pip nuzzled his shoulder gently, careful of his fragile bones. Same thing. She departed for the orphan center, wings catching air currents gracefully. David watched her go, pride and love swelling in his chest. The center was staffed mostly by humans now. Something about death world instincts translated well to protective care. Beings who survived harsh environments understood how to nurture the vulnerable. It had become humanity's unexpected gift to the galaxy. David made his way slowly to the center, joints protesting. He did not work there officially anymore. Retirement had claimed him 5 years back. But he visited daily, helping where he could. The new arrivals were being processed. Medical scans, psychological evaluations, species-specific needs assessment. All designed to help them thrive, not just survive. That a young human woman named Rachel led the team. She had grown up on Meridian, inspired by David's story. Now she ran the largest cross-species orphan care facility in the sector. David, she greeted him warmly. Come and meet the new ones. If they want to meet an old man, they know who you are. They asked about you during transport. That happens sometimes. David had become a legend, whether he wanted it or not. The janitor who changed the galaxy. It felt absurd to him. He just helped one small dragon. Everything else spiraled from there. Rachel brought him to the common area. The 6 new orphans huddled together, seeking comfort in numbers. They looked up when David entered, eyes wide with recognition. The small avian hopped forward. You are the one who saved the dragon. I helped a friend who needed help, David said gently. And now I want to help you. Nobody wanted us. The aquatic child's voice was barely a whisper. We are broken. David's heart broke, as it always did with newly arrived orphans. He lowered himself carefully to the floor, ignoring his protesting knees, putting himself at their level. You're not broken. You are different, and different can be wonderful. He gestured around the center. Everyone here was rejected once. Now look at them. The common area held dozens of young beings from various species, playing, learning, living together. Some would eventually reunite with their birth species. Others would be adopted by different species entirely. All will be loved. Will we find homes? The tiny mammalian creature asked. Yes, maybe here on the station. Maybe with families who want you. Maybe with each other, forming your own family. But you will find where you belong. How do you know? David smiled. Because I found where I belonged. In a supply closet with a dragon everyone said was worthless. If I can find family in the most unlikely place, so can you. Pip arrived then, her presence filling the room. The orphans stared at her in awe. A full-grown dragon, powerful and beautiful. This is what broken looks like when given love, David said softly. She was supposed to die. Instead, she became extraordinary. Pip lowered her head, allowing the orphans to touch her scales. They approached shyly, then with growing confidence. The avian stroked her wing, examining the slight deformity still visible, understanding that imperfection did not mean worthless. Over the following weeks, David watched the new orphans settle. The avian child bonded with a human family who had lost their daughter. The aquatic found home with a mixed species collective in the water district. The tiny mammalian, named Bit by the staff, attached herself to Pip and refused to leave her side. Pip accepted this with grace. "I suppose I'm a parent now," she told David, amused and touched. "Welcome to the club," he replied. "It is terrifying and wonderful." More orphans arrived. The transport came monthly now, sometimes more often. The center expanded, added wings, hired more staff. The Cross-Species Guardianship Act had created pathways for thousands of beings to find families. Not everyone succeeded. Some orphans struggled too much with trauma. Some could not adapt to cross-species care. David mourned each failure, even as he celebrated each success. But the successes far outnumbered the failures. That was what mattered. On David's 69th birthday, the staff threw him a party. Beings from dozens of species attended. Orphans he had helped, now grown and thriving. Parents who adopted across species lines. Advocates who fought for the rights he had helped establish. Pip stood beside him, Bit riding on her shoulders. 3 generations of the unlikely family he had built. "Speech," someone called. Others took up the chant. David shook his head, but they persisted. Finally he stood, leaning on Pip for support. "I am not good at speeches," he began. "I am just a janitor who could not walk away from someone in need. But I learned something important 20 years ago in a supply closet. Love is not limited by species. Family is not defined by biology. And the beings we reject might become the ones who change everything." He looked at Pip. She was supposed to be nothing, defective, worthless. Instead, she became a bridge between worlds, an ambassador, a symbol of hope. And most importantly, she became my daughter, my family, my home. Pip's eyes shimmered. She chirped softly, their private language. "I love you too," David said. The room erupted in applause. David sat down quickly, overwhelmed. But Pip stayed close, her wings sheltering him gently. 2 years later, David's heart finally gave out. He died peacefully in his sleep, Pip curled beside him. She held his hand as he passed, humming the lullaby he used to sing when she was small. The galaxy mourned. Thousands attended his memorial. But the real tribute came in the lives he had touched. The orphans who found homes. The families who formed across species lines. The laws that protected the vulnerable. Pip continued his work. Raised Bit with the same love David had shown her. Ran the orphan center with Rachel. Advocated for beings who had no voice. She lived for another 70 years, dragons having long lifespans. During that time, she watched the galaxy transform. Cross-species families became common. Cultural exchange flourished. The old boundaries that once seemed so important blurred and eventually disappeared on her deathbed. Surrounded by children and grandchildren from a dozen species, Pip thought about that night in the supply closet. A rejected hatchling, a lonely human, an improbable connection that changed everything. "Thank you," she whispered to David's memory, "for seeing me when nobody else would, for building me a home in a closet, for teaching me that family is what you make it." Her last thought was David's face that first night, looking at her with kindness when everyone else showed only disgust. That moment created everything that followed. Love built a home in a supply closet, and from that home, a new galaxy was born. 1, where being different was not a death sentence, where crossing boundaries was not betrayal, where family meant whoever loved you, whoever you loved back. That was David Reed's legacy. Not laws or speeches or grand gestures, just love offered freely to a small dragon nobody wanted. And sometimes, love is enough to change everything.